Tina Fenton, and I'll be doing a presentation on the creation and recreation of Venus, and we'll be discussing two artists over two different time periods and their two paintings in comparison and contrasting. So let's begin. The Creation and Recreation of Venus by Tina S. Fenton. This is the agenda. The overview. We'll be discussing Titian and Monet. We'll be doing a description of paintings, Venus of Urbino and Olympia. We'll be doing a compare and contrast, looking at the historical and cultural context, and doing a representation of women in that time. At the end, you'll find 2 pages worth the resources that I gained information from. Titian. He was a leading artist in Venice who was known as one of the greatest painters of the Italian Renaissance. He was the oldest of 4 children and became an artist's apprentice as a teenager. He began to work on his first major commission for a church called Santa Maria Gloriosa, afterwards completing the worship of Venice. Titian cultivated a broad range of royal patrons during his career, befriending writer Pietro and sculptor/architect Jacopo, who helped to propel his art. Titian created portraits for Pope Paul III and religious and mythological pieces, Spain's Philip II, Venus and Adonis, and a piece inspired by Metamorphosis. Titian later died of a plague, leaving a legacy of works inspired by countless generations of artists. Now let's look at Monet. Monet became a lover of painting at a young age and went to art school and studied the old masters in Europe. At age 18, he began studying under Thomas Couture. After 6 years as a student, he opened his own art studio. He began to explore his various styles that included realism and impressionism. His art was composed of everyday subjects such as singers, street people, gypsies, and beggars. Monet's most famous works include The Luncheon on the Grass and Olympia, which was inspired by Titian's Venus of Urbino. Monet led the French transition from realism to impressionism. By the time of his death in 1883, he was a respected revolutionary artist. Now we'll take a look at their 2 paintings, Titian's Venus of Urbino. The subject matter is that this image depicts a woman in her sensuality. It shows a young woman reclining on a bed, nude, in the lavish setting of the Renaissance palace. Artistic style. This image is more crisp and sharp in style, using more profound colors, such as the distinct red, as you see right here, and right here on the woman. It depicts naturalism, displaying the woman in her most pure form. Monet's Olympia. Subject matter. This image depicts a reclining nude woman tended to by a maid while a black cat, far right, as I'll show you now, gazes mysteriously out at the viewer. The maid is presenting Olympia with a gift of flowers. Artistic style. The brush style is more blurred with stronger brushstrokes. The colors are less vibrant, and the woman very pale. Now we'll do a compare and contrast as I point out some of the pieces that I will be comparing and contrasting. So they are both on a reclining bed, nude, as you can see. Venus has more tone in color. Olympia is very pale in color. Venus her head is rested on the pillow. Olympia, her head is standing erect. Venus has more sharper images, which creates a more defined image, more believable, more natural. Olympia has very blurred brushstrokes, as you can see, looking more like a painting. No definity. Venus has more brighter colors, as I stated before, such as the red bed, the woman with the red dress on, the purple for the night. The colors in this image are very pale, very dark toned. In Venus of Urbino, there's a Black woman kneeling in the background. In Olympia, you see a Black woman serving Olympia. In Venus, you see a little dog laying comfortably, lying asleep on the bed. And in Olympia's photo, or image, I should say, you see a black cat standing very perturbed, glaring out at you. Venus of Urbino, her left hand is placed over her genital area. In Olympia, you notice that her left hand is placed on her thigh. Let's continue. Historical and cultural context. Venus of Urbino. The Renaissance began around the 1300s. Europe arose from the stagnation of the Middle Ages and experienced a time of financial growth. Renaissance was in an age which artistic, social, scientific, and political thought turned in new directions. A new style of art and writing spread to the Netherlands, France, Germany, and England. Early writers and artists created their works in Italy due to the war. Values that shaped the Renaissance. Celebration of the individual. Artists and writers became more famous. Love of classical learning. Renaissance scholars loved the writings of ancient Greece and Rome. Enjoyment of worldly pleasures. Renaissance humanists suggested a person might love and enjoy life without offending God. History and culture continued. Olympia. In the 19th century, political was unstable in France. The urban populations of Paris and other large cities were the target of popular prints and newspaper caricatures. The Salon was the major exhibition venue in the 19th century. It was the only place where professional artists had access to a large audience. Realist art was more than a depiction of appearances. It focused on specific facts of modern life, and it didn't deal with general principles of existence. It focused on specific facts of modern life. It called for the spectator to see without prejudice. All realist artists, although different, had the same objective: to question schemes and conventions and display their own view of the present. Women represented in that time. This is an image of Olympia. I cropped her face so that you can get a better glance of her image. Monet painted a woman of his time, but not the ideal woman, a real woman, a Cartesian, someone who was considered a prostitute. He was painting what he saw in everyday life of seeing a white woman with a Black woman servant. Same thing with this picture. Again, the resources are at the end, cited in the references page. Titian displayed a woman who was a symbol of marriage and sensuality. It reminded the woman of her marital obligations to her husband. The eroticism of the painting represents Venus, the goddess of love, as the sensual and delectable woman captivating her audience. These are the cited sources. Sources continued. Again, that is the end of my presentation. I hope that you learned as much as I did going through these various images and learning about these various painters and some of the things that they had to go through or that they went through in order to become the painters that they became, and also just expressing their selves through their art. Tina Fenton, this is my CFA project. Hope you enjoyed.